Peace and love, family. I want to rise upon the seven and give all praises to the great God Allah and honors to his holy prophet, honors to my holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Yalahad Sharif Abdul Ali, that is, and give honors to my Moorish kin once again, here, there, and everywhere, and therefore honors to all of you who are continuously honoring yourselves by being yourselves. Give honors to our Grand National Seal, Grand National Emblem, National Flag, Divine Constitution, and bylaws, and honors to all of you who are indeed a living manifestation and personification of everything, and I do mean everything, that our holy prophet brought to make us a nation. Islam, I want to give honors to everything it is our Moorish kin is doing, on the manifest in this new era and time to uplift fallen humanity. This is a grand drawing to know that our Moorish kin is working, so to speak. And we most definitely encourage our Moorish kin to continue to work, that they have been called to do. So we just want to say gratitude for that. I'm just trying to get these links right now because I want to make sure that all of our family can get this and just hold fast as we go into this particular presentation, which will be a brief presentation as always. But we want to take you into this fifth ADEPT degree. Okay, so but let us proceed. Dealing with this particular measure that we had to bring on the manifest, it is actually dealing with the fifth ADEPT degree, the fifth brotherhood test, which is dealing with heroism. Now, in the West, we have been taught that, a hero is somebody that does heroic things. A hero is somebody that, would, some people would say, bite the bullet for someone, place themselves in harm's way, to bring forth some form of trying to aid and assist, someone else. These are different forms of heroic acts that we hear about, So we here at this special level find out that we have made heroes out of prophets. We have made heroes out of leaders, people who have come on the manifest and influenced our people in some type of way. These acts of boldness were often considered heroic acts, you see. And what we find that upon investigation, that these heroic acts that we look forward to have become, scapegoats that are used often by people because they are looking for someone else, to bear their burden. But we know that we are the ones whom we await. We know that we are the ones who will bear our own burden, and so there's no need for us waiting for someone else to be heroic in their acts to basically get a job done, so to speak. We are the ones we should look to. But in this particular degree, there are certain measures that you are going to find out about, and we're going to go right into them. And this is coming from our Moorish Holy Quran of the Moorish American government. It states, Yehoshua, the neophyte, and I added that portion, passes the fifth ADEPT degree, heroism. The sacred temple groves were rich in status, in statues, monuments, and shrines. Here Yehoshua loved to walk and meditate. And after he had conquered self, now remember, he's in the chambers now. He's alone while he's going through all of this, okay? It says, and after he had conquered self, he talked with nature. And in these groves for 40 days, right? It said, he or rather, then the guide took chains and bound him hand and foot and cast him into a den of hungry beasts, of unclean birds and creeping things. The den was dark as night. The wild beasts howled, the birds in fury screamed, the reptiles hissed. And Yehoshua said, "Who is it that did bind me thus? Why did I meekly sit to be bound down with chains? I tell you, none has the power to bind the human soul. Of what are these fetters made?" And in his might he rose, and what he thought were chains were only worthless cords that parted at his touch. And then he laughed and said, "The chains that bind me to the carcasses of the earth are forged in fancy shop, and are made of air, and welded in illusions fires." Wow. If man will stand and use the power of will, his chains will fall like worthless rags. For will and faith are stronger than the stoutest chains that men have ever made. And Yehoshua stood erect among the hungry beasts and birds and said, "What is this darkness that envelops me? 'Tis but the absence of the light. And what is light? 'Tis but the breath of Allah vibrating in the rhythm of rapid thought." And then he said, "Let there be light." And with a mighty will, he stirred the ethers up, and their vibrations reached the plane of light. And there was light. The darkness of that den of night became brightness of a newborn day. And then he looked to see the beasts and birds and creeping things. Lo, they were not. And Yehoshua said, "Of what is soul afraid? Fear is the chariot in which man rides to death. And when he finds himself within the chamber of the dead, he learns that he has been deceived. His chariot was a myth, and death a fancy child. But someday all men's lessons will be learned, and from the den of unclean beasts and birds and creeping things he will arise to walk in light." And Yehoshua saw a ladder made of gold, on which he climbed, and at the top the white-robed priests awaited him. And again he stood before the council bar, and again no word was said. Again the hierophant reached forth his hand to bless, and he placed in Yehoshua's hand another scroll, and on this one was written heroism. The Logos had encountered fear and all his phantom hosts, and in the conflict he achieved the victory. It's a powerful measure here, and I'm paying attention to these questions that were asked. Who is it that did bind me thus? Why did I meekly sit to be bound with chains? That's one of, the aspects of the question what he asked. What is this darkness that envelops me? You see, he asked this question as well, right? But as he was asking these questions, he noticed that he had the power to overcome the things that were binding him. He noticed that it was not chains, physically, but these were chains that can be pretty much broken by means of the will. And even the strongest chains can't withstand a strong will. You see? But then also going back into dealing with one more question that he asked, he said, "Of what is soul afraid?" Now he didn't say of what is the physical man afraid. He say what, of soul. What is it of soul that his soul is afraid of? We know fear is false evidence appearing real. And if you talk about the soul being afraid, you're talking about the acts of the soul. You see, so you mean to tell me that Okay, peace. What just happened to the connection? But we all know Rome ain't built nothing to last. So as we were speaking in regards to dealing with heroism, and people thinking along the lines of what is heroic. Now, when we talk about chains being broke, these chains that were being broke, Moors, didn't have nothing to do with physical chains. And we talked about this fear being false evidence appearing real, of things that appear real, right? So having this special knowledge of, this so-called heroism, right? We know fear is the chariot in which man rides to death, according to our Moorish Holy Quran. We see also that Yehoshua climbed a ladder made with gold, at which when he reached the top, there was a white priest, well, a priest dressed in white garb, a white clad priest is what I meant to say. But that is special drawing, when you get into this special knowledge, Moorish kin, of heroism, heroism in regards to dealing with one coming out of the darkness has to do with one coming out of the darkness of their own thinking, one coming out of the darkness of their own ignorance, one coming out of the darkness of, weakness, all of those things that make us subject to someone else or something outside of the self, something that rules over us and becomes a god to us. You see? So when we learn, from this special level, what heroism is, we learn that heroism, is an illusion. But I always like to go into the aspect of heroism. As you can see, at the root of Hierophant, you will see Heru. Heru in ancient Kemet, was one that is depicted as being bold. Heru represented sovereignty. Heru represented power. Heru came on the manifest to overcome the foe of his father. And he did that by bringing Set into subjugation. This is dealing with the lower self, also referred to as the Samai Tawi. And you will see this expressed in ancient Comedian glyphs, where you see the two tying, a particular cord. To us as adepts, that's the golden cord of love. You see, because love casts out all fear. And when one has love divine in them, or they reach the level of love divine, which is, the highest of these particular degrees, these brotherhood tests, then we find that love and divinity is enough to strengthen our will and allow us to become the will of the great God Allah made manifest. And I give honors to you, Brother Sean L. Demetrius Brown Bay, and our brother Zodin. Islam. Honors to you, Islam. So, Moors, this is just a powerful drawing, to be able to get some grand insight out of what we talk about when we say heroism. Because we don't look for this measure as, the European tried to give it to us. We ain't looking for no Superman. We can even see, as good as the movie was, and we want to give honors to our beloved brother Chadwick Boseman, pardon self, who cast it in Black Panther. This movie was a grand movie, when it comes to the idea of a utopia for our people and all of that, but it's sad that our people, they themselves can only romanticize about what it is to be a great nation. So much so that most of our people went out and they spent so much money to where they pretty much topped most of the numbers that had ever been brought forth in Hollywood when it came to those types of movies. And this shows that our people long, for a better condition. They long for, coming out of that special state, and having a greater state of existence for themselves. But we find out that we can't wait for anybody to do these things for us because you are the hero. You are the one that you await. You are, that so-called Jesus that you've been waiting on. You see, you are the Savior that you've been waiting on. I'm going off of what the prophet said. Prophet Noble Drew Ali told us if man is to look and find his Savior, then he would look within. You see, so it is the Savior that is the hero, comedically, that transcends just some hero. You see, so you either dealing with heroism or you dealing with heroism. This is just a nugget I'm dropping in there. And hero is synonymous with spirit. The spirit is a part and partial in oneness with the great God Allah through deific will. So being that this is the case, and that the spirit is a part and partial of the great God Allah through deific will, you have what you need in order to allow you to overcome all things. You are well equipped for the journey along the way. You are well saddled and equipped. And this is just as the neophyte. You see, if you go in here, you also see that Yehoshua, it states that after he had conquered self, he talked with nature in these groves for 40 days. So he was listening to the silent voice that spoke within him. This was after the conquering of the self. He could hear because his state of consciousness was now still. You see, he was active, but his state of consciousness was in a state of being still. He let the peace be still and he could hear. You see? So I like this other portion here too when it spoke on, it said, but someday all men's lessons will be learned. And from the den of unclean beasts and birds and creeping things, he will arise to walk in light. And we know in ancient Kemet, you would often see the head of a human upon the body of an animal, vice versa, head of an animal on the body of the human. We know comedically from a high state of vibration, when you had the animal head, on the human body, this was synonymous with showing certain characteristics, displaying characteristics that the human had, being able to master certain measures, because animals have very unique qualities, distinctive qualities, so to speak. But yet they make the all out of those qualities. You see, we have many qualities, but what have we made out of ours? So that's a high vibration of looking at it. But in the low, on the animalistic degree, to have the head of an animal, a flip side to that, a special coin, this can also display the characteristics, of one's animal passions. You see, what one desire, what one is striving for in the material realm. And this actually becomes, as it has been stated here, pretty much a den of unclean beasts, birds, creeping things, and everything. And so when we are able to overcome this, we too are able to arise and walk in light. So we have to come out of the animalistic passions and come into, those special portions of self-mastery that will propel us, into our heights of divinity to be conquerors of the self. And this is when we are demonstrating heroism, not heroism. Heroism is often connected to king's ambition. And we know, according to our teachings, that king's ambition, we are told, is a sturdy foe to fight. This king's ambition has nothing to do with someone outside of you, but it has to do all with the self. So let us go beyond being selfish and become selfless and tap into that heroism instead of heroism. It's a difference between the one. You want to be like Superman? a hero, or you want to be like a god and be Heru? You see, our brother was talking about that, J.A. Roger, from Superman to Man. You see? But then when you go up into that special measure, we see it ain't no difference between the average so-called Superman and man, but we know where they got the concept of Superman from. You know, they got that from our ancestors. That's why when you look at a lot of these different depictions in Marvel, you know, whoever produced them, or these so-called superheroes, we find they have certain powers that they try to portray, right? Well, we have saving powers in the reality of this world. But how can we tap into those saving powers? Save that we have one that teach us. You know, when you deal with the X-Men, for example, Professor Xavier was the one that instructed them and taught them to exercise their will and utilize their powers, or tried to teach them to harness them, right? Well, our Holy Prophet was our Professor Drew. And he was the one that was able to come and aid and assist us, that we may be able to activate our saving powers that we are able to exert at the will of our own use, at the will of our own use. But we have to become strong in the thought, because the thought of the great God Allah made manifest is his strength on the manifest through us. And that's what heroism is all about. This is that ancient Comedian way. You see, you would often see Asa with the crook and the flail in his hand. These are symbols of royalty and sovereign authority that the God man had. You see, and these things were passed down through dynasties. Well, here in the Moorish American government, we have ensigns that were given to us. You know, flags, seals, emblems, and so forth and so on. These are our special ensigns of authority. They were not given solely for us, but they were given to us for the good of our people. You see, it's not in the possession of a thing, remember, but knowing and having the ability to use those things that make them more effective. So we are climbing a ladder, a 12-step ladder of gold, Moorish kin. And we just want to encourage our Moorish kin to come on up. You know, they used to say, come on down. The price of, we're going to say, come on up this 12-step ladder. And it's free too. You ain't got to pay for it. You ain't got to go in nobody's back room. You know, you ain't got to, you know, take no oaths. You know, all you got to do is take a sacred vow to the self and become a neophyte and master self and demonstrate self-mastery. So that's my special measure in regards to dealing with this. It don't take long to tell the truth, you know, but the Logos, remember, he encountered fear and all his phantom hosts, and in the conflict, he achieved victory. So Allah is leading on and victory is assured, Moorish king. We give honors to you, gratitude, Islamism without the schism, peace, love, and law at all costs, and we'll see you at the next degree. Peace and love.